Hi, and welcome back to your next video. So, we are going to do some story time. So, we're going to read a story together. The name of the story is Hansel and Gretel. Maybe you already know the story, or maybe it's the first time that you hear it. Well, I hope that you will like it. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask you some questions. So, pay attention and, well, let's begin. So, this is what the cover looks like. If you see this, what do you think the story will be about? It doesn't say so much, right? I see a house with like candies in the middle of the woods. What would the story be about? I don't know. Let's begin. So, once upon a time, there lived two children called Hansel and Gretel. They lived with their father and stepmother in a house in the woods. Their father was a woodcutter. What does that mean, a woodcutter? What would that be? What would be the father's job? A woodcutter. Would it be someone who was cutting stones? No, he was cutting wood. So as you can see over there, that is what he uses to cut the woods. So the woodcutter was very poor. He could no longer provide food for his family. One night, his wife suggested that they take the children into the forest and leave them there. So the stepmother says, "We cannot feed the kids anymore, so maybe you should just leave them in the woods." Is that nice? Is that a good thing to do? No, that is mean, right? So Hansel and Gretel overheard what their stepmother had said, and they were very sad. Why would they feel sad? What do you think? And what's his family? Was the family rich or poor? So Hansel crept outside and found some white pebbles. They shone brightly in the moonlight. He filled his pockets with the pebbles and crept back inside. The next morning, they all went for a walk in the forest. As they walked, Hansel dropped the pebbles along the path. So you see, he left those pebbles over there on the road. Then they went further and further into the forest. Hansel and Gretel grew tired, so the woodcutter made a fire and told them to rest here. So they got tired, they made a fire, and then the father told them to go sleep there. What would happen next? What do you think what will happen? Would they go to sleep over there? And what happens when they wake up? What do you expect? So when they awoke, they were all alone. But Hansel's plan had worked. They could follow the stones all the way home. So that was smart, yeah? He left those stones over there so that they could find the way back home. And when they arrived home, the woodcutter was overjoyed. However, their stepmother was very cross. She was really angry. So later that night, she told the woodcutter that he must get rid of the children again. So their stepmother told their father to get rid of them. Would he do that? The next day, the stepmother gave Hansel and Gretel 2 slices of bread for their breakfast. They set out into the forest again. So they put the breadcrumbs all over the place, I guess. But this time they walked a lot further into the heart of the forest. As they walked along, Hansel dropped breadcrumbs along the path. So they left the breadcrumbs all over the place, like what they did before with the stones. Is that a good idea? What do you think that will happen? When the children were tired, the woodcutter told them to gather wood so that he could build them a fire. He told them to rest by the fire, and once again they fell asleep. And when they awoke, they found themselves alone again. So the father had left. Hansel was not worried. He told Gretel about the breadcrumbs, but when they looked along the path, they found they had been eaten by the birds and animals in the forest. You see? So they left the breadcrumbs, but all the birds had eaten them. So Hansel and Gretel walked and walked through the forest. Eventually, they came across an amazing house. It was made of gingerbread and decorated with sweets, icing, and lollipops. Would you like to enter to that house? It looks nice, yeah? Probably it's full of sweets. Hansel and Gretel began to eat the sweets. Then, all of a sudden, an old woman came out of the gingerbread house. She invited them both inside. Would they go inside? Would it be a good idea? But once the children were inside, they found that the old woman was very cruel. She locked Hansel in a cage. She wanted to fatten him up and eat him. Ooh, so she wasn't that kind after all. One day, the old woman showed Gretel the oven where she was going to cook Hansel. Gretel decided to trick the old woman. She told her that Hansel was too big to fit into the oven. The old woman leaned forward to take a closer look, and Gretel pushed her straight into the oven. Next, Gretel found the key of the cage and unlocked it so that Hansel could get out. They were overjoyed. Before leaving, Hansel and Gretel had a look around the gingerbread house. They found a chest full of golden coins. They decided to bring the chest home with them. After a long walk through the forest, Hansel and Gretel eventually found a path they recognized. They ran excitedly along the path and finally saw their home in the distance. Ooh, they must be very relieved. There, outside the cottage, was their father. Their stepmother had died, and now they had enough riches to last a lifetime, and they would never be hungry again. The three of them lived happily ever after. So, what do you think of the story? Did you like it? Is the story realistic or is it a fairy tale? What is your opinion? Well, let me know what you thought of the story. I hope that you enjoyed it and I will see you in the next video.